Hey everybody. I wanted to give an update about two particular assets that have really been enjoying some pumps over the past 30 days. That would be Solana here, and if I can find it, Fantom here at 207% and 172% gainers, respectively, in the last 30 days. Now, even more particular, we can look back at just the last week and we can see Solana is really a big standout among the top 30 or so assets. And if I can find Fantom, right here at plus 42.64% in the last week. Uh, Both of them have been getting a lot of attention, in particular for their starts to this week, or at least since Sunday or so. They've really been surging against, kind of the flat markets or even slightly declining markets that we've seen for most of the rest of the uh, crypto landscape right now. Bitcoin, of course, sliding back down to below 47,000 at the time of this recording, and many assets going down with it, if not falling further below. As we can see in the last week, Bitcoin minus 3%. Many are well below that. Avalanche in particular is seeing a big correction right now. But the reason why I'm focusing on Solana and Fantom is because they have respectively been atop these trending words over the past few days. Fantom was kind of a mainstay for most of yesterday, and Solana has essentially been a mainstay for about a week straight now, atop our trending words list at number one in with their ticker format, and Solana at number two with their slug format. Both of these are getting massive attention for good reason. The price has pumped. It got a little past 120, I believe, before it's corrected down a little bit today. But it's still number one and number two because of the massive increase in discussion and chatter on many social platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Discord, Telegram, and some pro traders chats that Santiment follows. They are hugely being discussed compared to their norms. In other words, they are at a much higher standard deviation than they typically would see uh, if it was just a normal day of Solana talk. So that's why they're atop the trends. And typically, when we see something atop the trends, once it reaches a top three position on that countdown I just showed, their average return over the next 2 weeks is about negative 12%. And this is a back test of hundreds. It may even be thousands. I can't remember the sample size, but we back tested many different assets who were in this same scenario as Solana currently is. And this is where it is now at number one and two. In fact, it's been this way for about 5 days. So we could basically say this line right here has extended about 5 days or so, and we're still waiting for it to not be in the top three so we can see how the results end up looking here. But right now, it's in a top three position. That typically is bad news if it's occurring simultaneously with a price pump, because that means the increase in discussion is almost always going to be related to the price increase. Therefore, it's related to FOMO and the crowd kind of discovering this asset and jumping in while it's rising. And as we've discussed on Santiment calls before, when an asset is discovered by the crowd, especially for the reason of a pump, it generally means that many are about to get burned. It doesn't mean it'll happen immediately, but it's a zero-sum game in crypto, just like any other trading class. And MVRV is a good example of that. MVRV discusses how no matter what time frame you're looking at, it's going to be an even amount of percentage returns, not necessarily an even amount of winners and losers, but there's an even amount of winners of winning trades and losing trades in terms of the amount of assets being traded. So if, for example, even though we don't have MVRV data on Solana right now, Solana is almost certainly well above, if not at its all-time high in MVRV for most time ranges, especially short term over the past week, with it being up as much as it is, 50%. That means that the average trading returns are in the double digits by a landslide, probably above 30%, which is massive for a week-long stretch. And that needs to come back down to 0% at some point. And usually once it hits this top ranking here on our emerging trends, that's a good sign of it. I will also show you right here before I get into Fantom. So this is social volume for Solana over the past 3 months. And these red dots here indicate times where it actually hit anywhere in the top 10 in terms of emerging trends. I can't tell you whether they were in the top 3 here, but this is the last time it hit the emerging trends earlier today. And guess what? Right after it hit, you see my cursor's lined up right before its all-time high, and it's been dropping ever since. You can see the largest social volume spike in at least the last 3 months occurred pretty much right at the top. And social volume is a really good sort of secondary metric to look at along with uh, when an asset is in the trending page, like it is signified here. And when you see a trending notification as well as a social volume spike, that's a pretty telltale sign that a rising asset is hitting crowd discovery and is usually going to see corrections. Even here, even though this was a temporary correction, look how it occurred right after this local top at 116, and it got down to 110, so very minor correction, but these are more extreme examples, big spikes here in groups like you'd want to see, and then a mild correction. Big one here, a little bit of volatility followed by a minor correction. This one, when about 2 weeks ago, when it showed up in the emerging trends and it had social volume spikes at the same time, minor correction. It's pretty telltale. Like even these mild ones, you can see a little bit of volatility happen on the negative side right afterwards. So just something to keep in mind there. Lastly, I want to show Solana's positive and negative sentiment scores, which are tracked solely on Twitter for this study, but we also have Telegram, Reddit, and Bitcoin Talk if you'd like to look there as well. This is all available for our pro members who have a pro membership for as low as $44 a month. Go to graphs.santiment.net/social, and you can see the massive amount of positive commentary that Solana has seen pretty much just about 4 or 5 days or so when it just started to spike through the roof. While look, negative commentary, it's up a little bit, but I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see the stark difference between the positive commentary and the negative commentary. This is usually a telltale sign that there's going to be some correction at some point. Could be for this could last another week or even 2 weeks, but at some point, this graph is going to indicate that the price will come zooming back down at whatever price it finally corrects at. I also want to show weighted social sentiment because this is quite noticeable. We got up to a +6 in standard deviation above the mean of where weighted social sentiment typically sits. And just like MVRV, it's going to rotate around 0. When it goes above, that means that there is a high ratio of positive commentary compared to negative, along with the social volume. So it's combining this above ratio here with with social volume at the same time to give us kind of a nice combination metric to tell us when we're way above the standard deviation, meaning there's a ton of FOMO, or well below, which we really haven't seen any crazy, maybe this one's our lowest one that I can even see back in July. And this coincided right with a price bottom. So when the crowd gets negative, price bottoms historically occur more than normal. When it goes extremely high, price tops historically happen much more than normal. So that's it for Solana. I'll transition over to Fantom, where we have a little more data. I'll start by showing you that MVRV metric that I just told you about. And this one is cool. This is a custom one that's using seven different time frames of average trading returns and combining that into one average MVRV. The lower it is, the better or less risky an entry position would be based on history. The higher, the more risky it is. And I'm combining that with an interesting one that one of our community members suggested, which is dividing the 30-day and 90-day MVRVs together to get a nice resemblance of short-term versus long-term traders. And you can really capitalize on some nice midterm fluctuations because of that. So as we can see, both are very high right now for Fantom because it's pumped quite a bit itself. You can see that as of today, it's really come back down to earth because of the fact that the average trading returns were so high, among many other things. You can also click here and switch to 7-day. It's still up close to 39%. And that's a quick snapshot way of seeing what its recent price returns are. We can also see another custom metric I made, which is active addresses divided by price. We have more of a detailed spreadsheet that kind of calculates how bearish and bullish it is, but you don't need an advanced spreadsheet to see that it's extremely high right now. We had a huge amount of active addresses, and a lot of these are combined with active deposits right now because many people are seeing the price run up and taking profit here. Or at least they're interacting with all of the volatility going on. And that's why we're seeing basically the highest spike of the year right now for Fantom in terms of address activity. And then we'll skip that. I also want to show the same chart we looked at for Solana, which is social volume and social dominance. And look at this spike here on 1 hour. I'm sorry, these are 4-hour blocks, but same point stands. We got to the highest social dominance of the year. This actually, I think, was the highest social dominance of all time for Fantom. This essentially means the overall percentage of conversation related to Fantom versus all discussions in the crypto platforms that we follow. And for a smallish, outside the top 50 market cap asset like Fantom to have almost 4% social dominance, that's as you would expect to be pretty massive. Now also look, these social dominance spikes here tend to occur right before or right when the prices tend to correct. Going back to April, this big spike, big correction when the dominance, even on the smaller spikes, huge correction right after you had time to react, about 4 hours to react to this spike that was relatively big for the time, and then a massive downswing. This one, not really that important. This one here definitely showed a nice correction that happened right after. This one here, same thing. This one, kind of a group of them. We'll call that kind of a vague one, but the ones that really stand out, like this one, you can see big correction there. And then this one here, we're in the midst of a big correction right now. So I find this stuff to be pretty useful. I will lastly, before I end the call, show you the Fantom. Where did I put it? Right there. The Fantom positive versus negative score, which is showing a very similar look to what Solana was showing, not quite as extreme, but you're seeing a huge positive spike run up and a mild negative spike run up. So interesting to see there, the weighted social sentiment. That's where I think it's really interesting. If any altcoin gets to a standard deviation above 3, guys, that's a pretty good indication that there is some serious anomalies happening that you can take advantage of. And if you saw this right before the 17 or 18% correction that it's on right now, you'd be able to capitalize pretty nicely with either a short or at least a profit take if you've been longing Fantom there. So just a couple social sentiment indicators that I think are really useful and helpful, and I hope you guys found this interesting. Looking forward to talking more about these assets as well as other assets you'd like us to discuss on the Friday call, and I will chat with y'all very soon.